The military, prompted by the January 6th rioting and violence at the Capitol, stand downs in the military to provide more, are used to provide more discussion between the officers and the rank and file on topics. Recently, for example, sexual assault, suicide. This is further training, time for further training, discussion, where the units have to focus on issues at hand. So now this is an opportunity for the whole of government approach to what we talked about a bit earlier in the program, which is the effort by the left to characterize everyone, including and most particularly the nonviolent, since the violent represents such an infinitesimal fraction of those in attendance on January 6th, much less in support of Donald Trump nationally, to characterize everyone as an extremist, a purveyor of hate speech. And so this will, right after they get done welcoming all the new clingers to the ranks, they can focus on this violent extremism, hate speech, sewing circles in the military. This is going to be a boon for military preparedness, I suspect. Great recruiting tool. For more on this and the underlying point I was making, we're pleased to be rejoined by Chadwick Moore. He's a contributing editor for The Spectator. Chadwick, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Great to be back.
Opening the war against Trump supporters on all fronts is the Biden administration.
Yeah, it seems that way. You know, one thing I think a lot of people struggle with is we're just kind of seeing how effective the authoritarian impulse in the Democrat Party is. I mean, are these competent authoritarian dictators, or are they just sort of bumbling, idiotic, nothing will ever get done because, of course, we have a constitution? Now, they've been very effective being totalitarians, of course, lockdowns in Democrat states and imprisoning people in their own homes and cities and states. But when it comes to enacting these sort of inquisitions that they keep talking about and these hate speech laws, and we just saw the New York Times, I believe it was yesterday, run an op-ed calling for a reality czar, because I guess Ministry of Truth was taken
right.
For the. So I'm still not sure. You know, if you look at someone like Cuomo, they seem really scary. But then, and even whoever's pulling the strings with Biden, you don't really know who's pulling the strings. But I think it's safe to say it's not him doing a lot of this stuff personally. We don't really know, you know, if they're serious or if they're just sort of wannabe authoritarians.
Well, boy, I don't. They're not serious. Gosh, with the amount of people being deplatformed and purged, with the boomerang actually of, for example, some proposed regulations of big tech at the state level in both Florida and Minnesota, fines and disclosure requirements if big tech wants to get itself involved in putting its finger on the scale for particular candidates. Say, for example, in Florida, Ron DeSantis addressed that the other day. Minnesota, sort of the same thing, $50,000 fines for improperly deplatforming people without cause. You know, the implementation of some of those state regulations may be problematic. I'm sure there'll be court challenges, but nonetheless, it's indicative of a seriousness, at least an assessment that the threat is very serious from those that have disproportionate power in society to silence debate and you know, by extension, opposition.
Right, and this is something. It should go to the courts, and that's a good thing, because I wrote about this a couple of years ago, actually, for the Washington Times. That really the best way, I think, to go after big tech censorship is basically taking the gay marriage approach. So you have to create a political moment. There was no political moment for gay marriage, all right? It was activist state legislatures. Nobody really wanted it at the time. It was activist state legislators that went over the voters to start passing gay marriage. And then you started creating a political moment where other blue states began doing it on their own. That's how you get a case to the Supreme Court. Like, none of this was going to go to the Supreme Court without that momentum. So you take that approach with Silicon Valley censorship, and I mean, there's so many things you can get Silicon Valley on that are actually illegal, like RICO, like racketeering and corruption, especially how they coordinate cross-platform to ban people, how they try to destroy market competition. I mean, you can do all that. Of course, Biden's DOJ wouldn't, and it's weird that Trump's DOJ never even tried. But if you want to go with the speech route, this is a really great way for state legislators to say, okay, in our state, if you ban one of our citizens, because we respect the Constitution, your business is speech, and you benefit from our speech laws in this country, of which there aren't any. If you are lying to people, if you're misleading them, you're people who spent countless hours and money building their platforms, and then it's basically their means of earning a living, and they create jobs, right? You snatch it away from them. Well, we're going to start fining you, all right? So once you have one state, red state do it, other red states begin picking that up. Now you're creating a political moment where it could go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court could say, you know what, these are perfectly legal. If the state wants to do this, it's fine. And that's exactly how gay marriage happened, and nobody really wanted it before that. And the courts weren't going to take it on.
I remember Obama and Clinton, they were like civil union, then they finally agreed on that, and then eventually Obama embraced same-sex marriage. But real quick, when it comes to big tech censorship, do you think President Trump was silenced because they wanted to have a smooth transition for Biden's first 100 days? Because think about it. If Trump had his Twitter account right now or Instagram, and he's got an upcoming impeachment trial beginning on Monday, can you even imagine what it would be like?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if he still had a Twitter account, the news cycle would still be revolving around Trump. It would be hilarious. Of course, it'd be like Biden wasn't even president. I do think. I didn't think that at first, and then it occurred to me recently, like, now I know what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
The fact he doesn't have a Twitter account may be very helpful in advance of his impeachment trial next week.
That's another way to look at it too.
That can cut both ways. I was tickled by Jeff Bezos's Fare Thee Well letter to employees the other day when he announced he was stepping down as CEO of Amazon after they recorded their first $100 billion quarter in revenue, fourth quarter of last year. He wrote in part, "As Amazon became large, we decided to use our scale and scope to lead on important social issues. Two high-impact examples are $15 minimum wage and the climate pledge. In both cases, we staked out leadership positions and then asked others to come along with us. In both cases, it's working. Other large companies are coming our way. I hope you're proud of that as well." So, again, we're talking mainly these days about big corporations, less so, even less so than about big government. And it's not just big corporations; it's big corporations that are networked. And Bezos sort of indicates as such when he talks about how others played follow the leader with Amazon. Of course they did, those that could, and then that gets imposed by local governments on those that can't. And then you have a Kroger example in Long Beach, California. Oh, you want to mandate $4 extra for quote unquote hero pay for our grocery chain workers? Well, those stores are struggling as it is. That wage for hundreds of employees doesn't make economic sense for us. So no problem. We're just shutting down our 2 stores in Long Beach. And then the grocery store workers are like, what the hell just happened? What did our city council just do to us? But this issue of networked corporations, as we've seen with the elimination of Parler, as we've seen with other social issues, as Bezos terms them, minimum wage, climate pledge, and so forth. This seems to me where the fight really is, more so than on Capitol Hill even.
Yeah, because these Amazon and Twitter and Facebook and big tech are running more of our lives and having more impact than obviously like squabbling on Capitol Hill and whatever Congress is trying to do or not do. But the minimum wage thing is so hilarious because the lefties are all for it. And okay, you have the world's largest retailer and one of the richest men in the world who's fighting for this. Why would that be? Why does it benefit Amazon to have $15 minimum wage? Well, because obviously the mom and pop store down the street can't afford that. Their prices are going to go up, and you're just going to spend even more money at Amazon. Like, people don't even think this far ahead, And you see the crushing of small businesses. You want $15 minimum wage? Well, great. Every time you go to McDonald's, you're going to be ordering from a screen, and basically we're going to enter a time where you never have to deal with another human being ever again in a retail setting.
Well, plus, I mean, this is one of the real hallmarks of the modern left, too, which is I'm a fraud politically, and I know I'm a fraud. Here's how I cover my fraudulence. I support things that the Occupy Wall Street, ill-informed Jacobin left wants, like $15 minimum wage. I throw a sop to the public sector unions and the rest of the Jacobin left so as to sort of paper over the fact that politically I'm a fraud. I'm really just interested in behaving one way when it comes to my financial interests and then throwing people bones to keep them away from me. So Amazon being the perfect example, right? The story last week about how they didn't want mail-in voting for unionization within Amazon, but of course strong proponents of mail-in voting for selecting a president. That they know they're frauds, and this is the way they get away with being frauds politically.
Yeah, and they're banking on the sort of far left base and the left wing media consumer to having extremely short attention span and selective processing of information they like and don't like, so that they can't. I mean, it's why every major globalist corporation in the world changes their logo to a rainbow flag in June. It's why they all came out in support of Black Lives Matter. It's paying the left wing piper, with the understanding that they can basically just do whatever they want. The things that they're really up to are too complicated for the average lefty to process or even to devote enough time learning about or thinking about. So it's quite simple for to keep the media and people off their backs to these very empty so those support and empty bromides behind things that they honestly don't really care about. It's just PR.
You were talking about potentially a moment, a political moment coming for big tech. Do you think the Biden order on trans individuals and sports at the K through 12 level, for example, it certainly impacts that, is a moment with respect to the larger cultural fight, the fight for chromosomal science to be followed, as well as other science that's always advanced? That the idea that men can play women's sports and subsequently dominate them, as is happening, is okay, and marginalizing girls' opportunities in sports. Is that a moment, or is that a moment that will be fleeting?
Well, I mean, it's setting the stage for that, certainly, because now you're going to have an opportunity for a biological female high school track star or whatever to have a case, and then that case can work its way up the judicial system. Obviously, I think it's going to be a couple years because they don't just happen overnight. But it certainly that executive order, outraged everyone, and I mean, of course, probably many more people than we know about because everyone's too afraid to speak up against big trans and the woke mob and whatever. But I mean, I think it's pretty rare to find a biological woman who is extremely comfortable with that, especially someone who maybe played sports in high school. But people are too scared to speak up, or they'll just falsely pretend that they care about it, but are actually raising their eyebrows. So it sets the stage for it. But Obama had done something similar, and we didn't really have anything under him. He basically made it, his executive order made it that they could deny federal dollars to any school that didn't let biological men into girls' locker rooms. Like, what?
So this has been, but it started. I mean, we've had men on girls' teams. This started years ago, and now I hope it does not get worse. But of course, I mean, it's an opportunity for guys to get girls' scholarships, essentially, to take millions away from girls that have worked so hard to have sports. And now this is the beginning of the end. So if you think if parents are going to fight for anything, it would be for this.
Right, exactly. And you're right, it has been around for years, and we've been seeing these news stories. And but the fact that now it's an executive order and people are talking about it is probably raising more consciousness for parents to actually do something. So we'll have to just see if anyone steps up.
Chadwick Moore, contributing editor for The Spectator. Chadwick, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.